Welcome to the second episode in the series about making the sheath for our DogLeg Sloyd. Today we're gonna carve the liner. I hope you enjoy a little bit of the birds in the background. It's spring here in Austria. So first of all, I wanna describe the type of profile that I would like to have on my Lester or liner in the end. So in this case, I'm just going for an octagonal design, and I'm gonna use this as a guide throughout the carving process. I usually don't describe these lines anymore, but it's a great help if this is the first time you're doing this. It's very important to just not go too deep on these parts. So what I'm doing here is first of all removing quite a lot of bulk, and it's important to realize when you feel a little bit of a splitting or tearing in your wood. I used very straight grain birch, as you saw in the last video. However, it's important to feel right away if your knife is grabbing instead of cutting. At this point of the sheath making or carving process, I'm going a little bit more boldly, removing a lot of material because it might not look like it, but there's actually a lot of material in this sheath still. I can just recommend you to make sure to go slow and along your guidelines. There was a little bit of a split there, but that's fine. I was confident doing that one. If this is your first time and you're already at that part of the sheath, you might want to go a little bit slower. So at this point we established our first chamfers, and they are basically just there to help us remove material a little bit easier. Just like in my spoon carving process, I'm always working with 45-degree angles to create ridge lines, because these ridge lines are a lot easier to take off. So at this point we went all the way down to our lines that we scribed, and it created a far smaller edge or ridge line there along the side, so we can actually clean up the glue lines. That went actually pretty well, the gluing up process. Definitely always a relief to see that the gluing job was well done. Just as I describe in my CCC method of spoon carving that I want to point out here to you folks, it's very easy for me to work on two-dimensional profiles first. So here basically I'm establishing my two-dimensional side profile of the sheath, cleaning up the glue lines at the same time, and then I can work myself through the other profile, 90-degree angle from it, down to a square piece that I can then shape into a three-dimensional piece, if that makes any sense. But if you want to have a longer description of that, just please check out my CCC method of spoon carving remastered video. So here I'm going ahead and for you scribe another second time these lines left and right of my glue line, and then a middle line as well where I want to create a ridge. What those two pencil marks on each side allow me is just aim for taking away the pencil mark left and right of my glue line and the middle ridge that I just scribed there, and create two clean facets on each side. That middle ridge that I just scribed with the pencil there is also just another piece that's going to be taken off. It's just so much easier to take these pointy ridges off than an entire surface. This is actually something that I learned in bow making, self-bow making years ago. I remember this book I had about Native American bow making written by a Hidatsa tribe member in the late 1800s actually, and he was already talking about creating these ridge lines with your knife or with a I think he was actually using a horseshoe file or something like that at that time, and just how much easier it is then to take material off. So there you go. At this point I'm always going back and forth between this end pommel there that I want to create, because this is going to be a half exposed liner. I'm working a lot cleaner on these half exposed liners because you're always going to see them, versus a wooden liner that's going to be entirely covered in leather. It's definitely a good idea at this point to constantly check, carve, and see if you're actually on the right path. At this point, I'm not too worried about my three-dimensional profile yet. I'm just seeing to create this ridge and that it actually flows and curves with the entire sheath. Just make sure at this point here, as we're getting a lot closer to the inside hollow, that you don't have any tears or any cracks happening, and then just follow through, because they might actually crack down into your hollow, and that would be the end of this sheath. It has happened to me, of course, a lot. So just take your time at this point, see that things are lining up. Here you can see the middle ridge is nicely flowing, but of course the side profile, or rather the front profile, still has these ridges that I'm pointing out here. So now it's not a big job, and it's very controlled to go ahead and take these off. And I just realized that there was a crack happening as I wanted to go in from the top. Nothing happened, like nothing was lost there, but I just realized there was a catch, so I changed the direction right away. And at this point now, I'm trying to keep the end pommel at its full thickness, but carve down to create a little bit of a taper there. So you're gonna see now at this point that the end pommel is definitely staying at a full thickness. And now I'm starting to take my time, because I consider these already cleaning and finishing cuts when it comes to the triple C method. That would be the last C, the cleaning part. So I'm taking my time, trying that the facets are nicely tapering, that they're all parallel, and this is definitely already some more aesthetic work here. Yeah, here you can see the tapering down from the pommel. A lot smaller cuts. You're gonna hear me blowing at the wood a lot at this point, because a lot of these little wood chips, I'm not really sure if they're still attached or if they just cling into the wood somehow. So I constantly try to blow them off to see what I still have to do. At this point, I want to remind you to really keep your knife sharp. This is cured birch now. It's not an extremely hard wood, but it's all about a nice surface finish here at this point. And you have to creep up on the grain there quite a lot in order to do the pommel. So keep your knife sharp. So far so good. Another ridge line on the other side to take care of. This side went nicely from the top. Carving towards yourself, mostly using your left hand to push the knife and the right hand to guide it, is the most controlled method of carving I've come across. Just as a little side note. Before we finish this Leicester, I just want to point out a few ways how I can support the channel. Visit woodsmansfinest.com for all my leather belts, custom knives, and of course all the treen and spoons. You can also find me on patreon.com/woodsmansfinest to keep the lights on around here. And down in the description box, there's always a ton of different links to different products on my Amazon shops. If I don't use it, it's not in there. And don't forget to browse the channel, folks. Interested in anything spoon carving or any of the finest tools on the market? Chances are I've got a video about it. Alright, let's get back into that. Now, I'm working on the other side of the sheath at this point. Of course, anything has to be done on both sides. Just keep in mind that there is actually front and a back of the sheath. So if you choose to make a couple mistakes, hopefully you manage to make them on the back. And don't worry about making any mistakes here. I mean, this is a project that is easily redone, and there's only benefit in making mistakes. This is something I really want to point out at this stage here. Alrighty, the curls are getting tinier. Definitely strop the knife a couple times in between. That never actually is a bad idea. You can see though that there's quite a lot of symmetry in here, and that's why I'm trying to go slow, because symmetry and the flow of these lines is something that I personally just adore the most. Alright, looking good so far. So the end pommel, I decided to just follow along with the hexagonal design that I've established on the outside. So with every of the lines that are, any of the facets actually that are ending up towards the pommel, I just extend them at the top. That's actually a quite nice effect. You can round it off as well if you want to. In fact, you can do with this liner anything you want to. You can completely round it over. I've done that before. That's a lot of fun. You can keep facets. You can make it hexagonal, octagonal, whatever you want to do. Actually, this is not a hexagonal design. Sorry, it is an octagonal design. There you go. Just the end grain, cleaned it up a little bit. I'm glad the gluing job went actually fine. So there is no ugly gaps. Now for the mouth, that is still a little bit uneven there. I just decided to, first of all, chamfer the edges there. That just makes a nice effect when we wrap it in leather later. Then you can also see that the ends were slightly out of tune there. So I'm just carefully cutting the end grain. When you carve end grain like this, go slow and try to have the knife sharpened really well, because it sometimes tends to crack just a little bit. A couple more chamfers there going along with my octagonal design. I got it right this time. You just have to count the ridges, dude. Come on, you're better than that. Anyways, so I'm pretty happy how this turned out, and this chamfering here is going to be a very nice transition when we do our leather connection. So that's it for today. I'm glad how this one turned out. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks very much for tuning in as always. And in good old YouTube tradition, please like and subscribe. Thanks a lot, folks. I'm gonna see you later. Cheers.